See, you're all wondering who the redneck is here in her blue jeans and her bad hair and her poochy belly. And I've got on my We the People shirt because I'm a big believer in We the People. I'm a retired military officer, a Persian Gulf War veteran. I'm a walking pre-existing condition. I'm 90% disabled. And so I have a lot to say about that stuff, but I'm not today because we've got people up here who mean something today. And I'm here to talk to you about how to think differently in your actions. I'm going to sound like a military person for a minute. I started telling this a little bit at the Women's Summit. So if you were there, I'm sorry you heard some of this, but I'm going to go out of it. How many people in here are military? Got some folks here? Anybody from the 101st Airborne? The 101st Airborne, it's an interesting story. During World War II, the 101st Airborne were surrounded by Germans in Bastogne. They were surrounded. They had no food. They had no water. They had no clothes. It was the middle of December. They were surrounded by Panzer tanks. They were surrounded by special forces of the German army. So the Germans thought, well, this is a no-brainer. They sent in a message and said, it's time for you to surrender. The German commander, interesting enough, was named McCullough. And he sent back a one-word reply, nuts, which today would be the equivalent of F you. And so, there he sits in the middle of the German army in the middle of December in Bastogne. Now, that's how I think the Democratic Party has looked at red districts. And this shirt is red for a reason, because I want you to think red and get angry, and I want you to think red and think we have to attack on all the levels. Because if you look at VPAP, you all know what VPAP is? If you look at that, most of the state of Virginia is red. And only thanks be to God to the great big areas of the metropolitan areas are blue. But if we ignore the red areas, we are going to lose over and over and over again. And that is what the Democratic Party has done. And that is why Indivisible is so cool, because we don't give a We want to win, and we want to give the people that are running for office the tools that they need to win. So who knows who saved General McCullough in Bastogne? Anybody? Patton. Do you know how far Patton was away from Bastogne? He was engaged in another battle with other troops, 161 miles away. Do you know how far it is if you're in Richmond to any part of Virginia? It's less than that. He disengaged, moved his entire force 161 miles, and liberated McCullough and the 101st Airborne. If he hadn't done that, there would be no Fort Campbell, Kentucky with the 101st Airborne, and we would not have won World War II because he crossed borders. The biggest thing I want to ask you guys about today is crossing borders. You know, we were so isolated. I ran in a ruby red district that's racially gerrymandered. And I'm waiting to see what happens with the new court rulings. They'll probably stick me in Chris Jones's district. And if people give me money, I'll give that boy a run for his money because people don't like him. And as these candidates, I will, because somebody called me a socialist redneck earlier, and you know, I sort of like that. Does anybody know where redneck actually comes from? The term? Huh? No. Do you know where it really comes from? It's Scottish. Who's Scottish heritage in here? It comes from the people who supported King James when he tried to fight back England. They wore red scarves to identify themselves. And after they lost, they were booted to America. They ended up in Appalachia. They ended up in Tennessee, where I was born. Well, I wasn't quite born, 2 weeks, but sort of born and raised there. And so that's why we're called rednecks, because we're of Scottish descent. So it's a little different than farmers. But what it is people who are willing to stand up for what they believe in. And so what I want to ask all of you today is I want you to think about, and I never can say Fauquier County right. It's kind of like Norfolk. If you don't say it right, there's different words you shouldn't say in it. So I really don't want to get too screwed up on the name of the county. But I drove 4.5 hours to come talk to you today just to tell you to cross district lines. Okay? Because it does absolutely no good whatsoever if 3/4 of the state is red. And the thing that you have to do is this. You know, you can't leave candidates that run in red districts. And these ladies are trying to do it here today. You did it. You didn't leave her alone. You can't leave them alone. You have to engage. Now, protests are great. I got irritated at Trump. I went to the Women's March. Amazed me. Got me so mad my little redneck Scottish body got off the couch and went and ran for office, which I've never done before. I'm an introvert. I don't really like public events. I've learned to talk because I'm a lawyer. But my favorite thing to do is be alone and play with my horses. That's what I like to do. But we're in a time right now that you all need to understand. We're in a time where in a year and a half, 200 people or less have totally starting to destroy the very thing this nation was created to do hundreds of years ago. And the reason they're doing that because they weren't asleep when elections were happening. They didn't have apathy when elections were happening. They weaponized. And so what I'd like to ask y'all to do, I'm writing postcards for you ladies, I already am. I've got about 10 people, I'm writing 200 postcards for each. And I want to also create people that cross lines. We need to develop some special forces. And my district needs indivisible real bad because I actually knocked on a man's door, lived in Isle of Wight, told me to get off his yard or he was going to shoot me. I got bit in the butt by a dog. I knocked over 4,000 doors myself because I didn't have any money. I had me. But what I understood, the guy that I knocked on in Isle of Wight, when he told me he was going to get off the yard or he was going to shoot me, I just said, well, all right, I'll leave. And I said, but I just want you to know you have a nice house. And I think it's pretty because I'm a history buff. I like old colonial houses. He looked at me and he said, we don't let those people live here. That's why we have nice houses. There are people out there that want to change the fabric of this country and go backwards. They want to go backwards. But if we don't get off the couch, if we don't cross county lines, if we don't cross district lines, if we don't cross congressional lines, if we don't support people, and you ladies said it, knocking doors and talking to people, phone lists are kind of with the cell phones now, but become an army. Become General Patton. Knock 500 doors for somebody that's not in your district. It takes 7 days. Is 7 days worth your democracy? I mean, is it? And what good is a House of Delegates that's got blue people in it if there aren't enough of them? What good is that? And what good is electing someone who's filthy rich to office if they can't find their way out of the bathroom? What good is that? The only reason Chris Jones voted for Medicaid is because he's a pharmacist and he'll make more money. It's the only reason he voted for it. And that man's got $500,000 in the bank, and he's probably the most powerful delegate in terms of the House of Delegates. But folks, we have to start fighting. We have to weaponize our bodies, weaponize our ability to support candidates. Bitching and moaning is just noise if you do not take that and turn it into action to support a candidate. So please, please cross lines. One thing I'd like to ask you that's really simple for the delegate House of Candidates or for the delegates for, I can't talk, see, for the House of Delegate candidates or for any candidate that lives in a red district, go find their Facebook page, go find their Twitter page, blow up their likes. If nothing else, let's blow shade on the Republicans so they don't know what we're doing. You know, because you never know. If you there's 200 people here. 200 people like those people's page. It's going to all of a sudden send a signal. Share some stuff. If you don't want to see stuff every day, you can make it where you don't see it every day. But start using yourself as a weapon. Because if you do that, we will win. If you don't, we'll be having this conversation in 2 years, and Trump will have totally destroyed our country. And you can't let that happen. I started my military career when the Russians were the Russians, and they're still the Russians. And the thing that shook me to the core of my being this week, and I'm not afraid to use the word treason, but the thing that shook me to the core of my being this week was when he came out of Helsinki with Putin, and there's a freeze-frame snapshot of them. Putin is grinning like a son of a gun. And if you don't understand how he's jeopardizing our military, he's jeopardizing our intel people, he's jeopardizing everything that it is to be American because he has opened the doors on everything, you've got to understand that. You can't sit on the couch and complain every morning. You've got to use your feet, your hands, and your mouth to get out there and fight. That's all I ask, folks, and I appreciate the opportunity to come talk with you. Thank you.